to just kind of be with our folks, be with the people that support Crossroads. And that's always such a joy to do that. And those three luncheons combined, we had over 400 people. And for a ministry our size to have that much support in just our local area, to include Chicago, not many folks can claim that kind of support. So I just want to say thank you for your support, whether you're at those luncheons or not. That's just an example of that support. But everyone on this screen is connected to Crossroads in some way, shape, or form, and I'm just thankful for that and humbled by it. And that was my first God wow. We call them God wow moments, where things happen at Crossroads and we go, wow, that's just something only God could do. And we're just honored to be a witness to those types of things that happen. Another thing I want to talk about, and if you've heard these conversations before, you know that I've told you that there is a large presence of tablets, like the iPad type, tablets that are in prisons. They don't look like that. They're a little more designed for prisons. But there's over 1 million tablets in prisons today in the hands of people who are incarcerated, probably approaching 1.5 million. And so we decided to have additional connection points with people in prison as a way to connect with our students in another way, but also as a way to make sure that the larger prison population knows about Crossroads and can sign up to our program rather than just hearing about us through word of mouth. And so we created a series of videos, and I think I saw Douglas on the recording on the Zoom call here. Douglas Kuperi, along with John Byrne, our Director of Student Programs, they created a series of videos done in the form of a podcast called Doing Time. And then we also uploaded to these tablets through some providers different content, including Douglas's book, which if you haven't read that, you should. His book, I See You. And we've also partnered with some other ministries to upload their content, because what we want to do is serve our students. We want to serve those in prison. And just this week, this is a pretty astonishing statistic. So just pause for a minute and wrap your head around it. We're able to count the number of views, the number of times that somebody has clicked on the content that we have on the tablet. So if you're sitting in prison and you have a tablet and you find Crossroads content on that tablet and click on it, that counts as a view. And you pick something to watch, whether it's Doing Time or some of the other videos we have on there or Doug's book. This week alone, this week, we found out that since we started on October the 8th, we have surpassed 1 million views. 1 million views. That is absolutely incredible to me. To think that how many of those people had never heard of Crossroads before, and now they have heard about us, they're learning about us, they're hearing about us frequently, and they're able to have a better knowledge of how to sign up. So at the end of every video, we have a commercial, if you will, that Douglas is on, where we encourage people to sign up for Crossroads Prison Ministries. And we were able to obtain the services of Stephen Baldwin, the actor, who's also a very devout Christian, has a very profound conversion experience story. And he does the intro to that, and then introduces Doug, who tells people how to sign up for Crossroads and shares his own personal experience of transformation, in part through being a student of Crossroads. So 1 million views, that's just incredible, and that's growing. We're continuing to add new content, and we're just so pleased about the progress of that. It gives us a whole new platform of people, ways we can reach them through student enrollment and through other ways that we can have touch points with people in prison and with our students. Along with that, on one of the providers, people in prison are able to subscribe to the Crossroads channel, if you will. What that means is kind of like some of you have streaming services like Netflix or any of the streaming services. You subscribe to it and then you can see whatever's on there and you get alerts if something new comes up. Same thing. This one called the Pando app, which is through a ministry called God Behind Bars. They have the ability to allow people to subscribe to the Crossroads content. And we now are up to over 15,000 subscribers. That's people that are looking for us, people that have the ability to be alerted whenever we post new content. So it's just extremely exciting for us to be able to reach more and more people in prison. And our hope is that that will translate into more enrollments, more people signing up, signing up for our program. So along with that, as I've also talked to you all before, one of our biggest struggles, probably our biggest struggle, is the shift toward restricted mail in prisons. There's a lot of drugs that are coming into prisons in mail, and it's very difficult to detect because it's soaked into the glue on envelopes and stamps, and it's soaked into the content on paper. So it's not like somebody's sending in a package of drugs and it gets picked up. It's masked, if you will, into the envelope, into the paper itself. So a lot of prisons have taken the step of going to a third-party scanned mail service. So what that means is that if you were to mail a letter to someone in prison, one of those prisons, you would mail the letter not to the prison, but to the address of the scanning service. They would scan it and then either mail the scanned copy to the person in prison or electronically send it to their tablet, which is very obviously problematic to us for a lot of reasons. Number one, in those cases, we can't get the envelope to the student. So we're working on two things. Number one, we are working on a way to deliver our messages, our lessons digitally, deliver it to the tablet. The student can fill out the lesson on their tablet, send it back electronically. We would, if you're a mentor, you could receive it electronically and fill out the answers, the comments on your questions, type an encouraging letter, and send it back electronically. A little bit of an oversimplification. And hear me clearly, our preference is to continue to do things the way we're doing it, because there's something powerful about that handwritten letter. There's something powerful that somebody took the time to handwrite a letter to you. So our preference is to continue to do that. But if we reach a circumstance where that's not an option, and the only other option is to lose access to people who want to study the Bible through Crossroads, then we're looking at this alternative method. And we're currently working with one of the private prison providers that I used to work for called Core Civic. And they're allowing us to pilot this in one of their facilities in Tennessee. And John Byrne, our director of student programs, is working closely with them on that pilot, just to do a proof of concept to see if we can get it to work. The other thing we're doing to facilitate and overcome these restricted mail issues is we're reformatting all of our lessons. So if you're a mentor, you're going to see a difference in the near future. It'll be the same content, same lessons, but the problem with the booklet format is that you can't scan the booklet. It's very difficult to. The pages come out all different and it makes it almost impossible. So we're reformatting our lessons to an 8.5 by 11 format, so that prisons that use a scanning service have no excuse to not deliver our lessons in the way that we sent it. So it'll be just like a piece of paper, just, like an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I've looked at the design that our marketing and communications team has done, and they've done a great job, just a really great job. You're going to be pleased with what you see. But keep in mind that this is our way to access students that are in facilities where the mail is restricted because of drugs and other reasons. So we have to be flexible. If we're not flexible and we're not creative, the correctional systems are not going to change for us. They're too big. We have to adapt our methods and our processes to them. So let me give you a really good example. And this speaks to our good relationship with corrections officials as well. In Texas, which is our biggest student base, and some of you, if you're mentors, you've experienced this. In Texas, which is our biggest student base, about 4,000 students, they went all of a sudden to an all digital mail delivery process where every bit of mail that came in was scanned and sent to a tablet. So the person in prison received their letters, their mail on a tablet. I emailed the director and told him, Director Collier, I just want to alert you to something, that your new mail system, while I understand the security concerns, is going to cause 4,400 students at the time, is going to cause 4,400 people in your care to all of a sudden stop receiving their Bible lessons. And to his credit, and I know him well, he's a really strong Christian. He responded to me within a couple of hours, delegated it to a couple of his deputies, and said, Joe, thanks for making me aware of this. We didn't intend for this to happen. Here's two guys that are going to help you work out this solution. And we did. Within just 10-minute conversation, we had the shell of a solution worked out. Bernice, who's on the call here, she worked very, very hard to transition to this new process. But the change in the process was we could bypass their electronic mail if the mentor letters and the mentor responses to the lesson came back to our office instead of going directly to the student. So if you're one of the mentors who have received Texas lessons, then it's been explained to you, what has happened. So we had all of that to say, reformatting the lessons, working on digital solutions. It is 2024 all day long, and the world is changing. The world of corrections is changing. The positive part of this is that I go to meetings where the directors gather and the top people in each correctional agency, and that's a part of my job. I have yet to find one who says, we just don't want Bible lessons in prison. We don't think it's important. They all are supportive of us. They have to balance it against their security concerns. And I've been a warden before too, so I understand that. They have to balance it against their security concerns, but they are all willing, for the most part, to work on a solution which will help us stay in contact with our students. So Alice, I've talked a lot about that topic. So it may be good to just pause here before I go into another topic to see if there's any questions on that specifically.
I think we had a great question in the chat here, Joe. Would it be possible to have Crossroads lessons online via tablet app? And so I know we've talked about that a little bit. I was hoping maybe you could add to that color and just what efforts we have in place to start to not only pilot, but also look towards the future of how we're going to evaluate it.
Yeah, that's something I would definitely like to do because it would be just an easy solution for those facilities that don't allow regular mail. The problem is the technology that's currently on the tablets in prisons, for the most part, does not allow for a person to interact, for the student to complete their lesson on the tablet and then send it outside of the prison walls. There's a security concern to that because they don't, prisons are all about order and control. And I get that too. I was, like I said, that's what was foremost for me when I was a warden, was that everything's got to be under control. So we're working toward that end with that Core Civic pilot. We're working closely with one of the tablet providers, a company called Origin, Orijin, who's really engaged well with us. And we're supposed to do another pilot with them later in the year. And the founder, the chief operating officer, and all of their staff are totally on board with it. They're good people. They are a tablet provider whose business model says they're not going to put anything on a tablet that charges an incarcerated person or their family anything. And I love that model. I think that's just a very honorable, moral, ethical model. So we're happy to be working with them on a second pilot after core civics to see if we can get that going. But right now, the hindrance is technology. The second hindrance would be cost. Some of the other tablet providers wanted to charge upwards of $60,000 to $100,000 a year for us to do this service, or for them to provide this service to us, and that's just not economically feasible for us to sustain. It was a per student cost, and so if enrollments exploded, we just wouldn't be able to keep up with it financially. We couldn't plan it in our budget. So right now, Origin is working with us on a much more economical level. So I don't know if that answered your questions. We're moving in that direction, but we're a couple of years ahead of the technology in what we want to do, and the technology is just going to have to catch up with us where prisons are comfortable with it.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
I had an interesting situation, with Texas. Things were mailed back, and then I got a lesson from Texas that had the Texas address, which surprised me. Well, I contacted Elena, and I found out that it's the state facilities that get mailed back, but not the federal facilities.
Correct.
Well, I didn't know that, so I changed the address to Crossroads and mailed it back to Crossroads. I didn't want to make a mistake, but
oh no,
but that was not clarified, in the explanations about Texas.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We probably should do that, and I know Bernice is on the call. We can put something out to make sure. I don't know if any of the mentor team is on the call, but Bernice can communicate that. Yeah, that's a really good point. Is it Don?
Don, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Don. We primarily deal with the state correctional agencies. We're not having a problem with the feds right now. But I met with the chief chaplain for the Federal Bureau of Prisons back in April when I was in DC, and they don't have tablets in the federal system, but they are beginning the process of scanning the mail. And they're doing that at the facility level, not through a third-party provider. So the mail would go to FCI Tallahassee in Florida, and they would scan it at the facility, which is all the more reason for us to do the 8.5 by 11 format, because I was in the federal system for 21 years. It would be a coin toss of whether somebody would take the time to scan a booklet accurately and send it to the student. So the 8.5 by 11 format solves a lot of ills. But you were right to send it back to Crossroads, and we can certainly forward it on from there, and we'll clarify that. So good point. Thanks for bringing that up. Other questions on that topic? All right. If you think of any other for the end, let me know. Was there anything else in the chat? I don't think so.
There's not. I think we can move on to the next topic.
Okay. All right. So the next topic is more internal. I want you all to know, because a lot of y'all, like I said, are mentors and or supporters. As I've come along in my tenure at Crossroads, I've seen some needs like these technology needs where we just didn't have the staff structured in a way to address it. I also saw a need where we needed to spend more focused time on our connection and our relationships with churches. Let me give you really one good reason. Let's take a church, for instance, that maybe at one time was a fully supporting church. They had a dozen or so mentors. We were in their giving plan, so they sent us money monthly or annually from their offerings. We were in their budget. They prayed for us intentionally in their bulletin, even referred students to us that they became aware of were incarcerated. So just a fully on board Crossroads supporting church. But then over time, the mentors started to, fade away, whether through, God forbid, passing away or just retiring or moving to a different church. And so the relationship with the church began to slowly, imperceptibly dwindle. And then the pastor changes a couple of times. They don't know who Crossroads is. So we saw our relationship with churches beginning to wane a little bit. Well, if you remember our mission statement is that Crossroads connects people in prisons with mentors from churches to study God's word together and develop Christ-centered relationships. In order for that to happen, we have to have strong relationships with churches. So without hiring anybody else, I shifted my staff around some, and I created a new department. And I don't know if Douglas is still on. I can't see the whole screen, but if Douglas is there, turn your camera on and wave. Most of you know him. Douglas's new title is Director of Church Engagement. He is now laser focused on our relationships with current churches, churches that have lapsed in their support of Crossroads, and new churches that we can cultivate to bring on board. It is so important at every level of our ministry to be church connected, and to be Christ-centered, to be student-focused, to be true to our mission statement and to our vision statement. And in order to do that, I had to have a staff person who was dedicated to that and that their time was not diluted by a lot of other responsibilities. So Douglas is that person, and he has dived in to his new responsibilities, and he's doing some research on our church partnerships. We're developing a new church relationship package that will help us communicate the whole scope of Crossroads, both domestically and the international work that we do, in a much more thorough way, in a much more consistent way. I think it's a real turning point, critical time in our ministry for us to re-engage with churches and establish our commitment to be connected to churches as the foundation of our ministry. So Douglas is now the Director of Church Engagement. Well, that left his mentoring responsibilities, mentor team responsibilities, kind of hanging out there. So I've shifted Jen Pichardo, who was our HR person and still functions in that capacity. She is now the Director of Mentor Support. So any support that mentors need, any questions they have, any issues they have with questions about how to answer a student or what new processes are, those kinds of things. Jen is now in charge of the team that does that. And many of y'all have communicated with her already. You've communicated with Elena, with Karina, with Alexis. You've communicated with that team for years now. So the big change there is that Jen is in charge of that team and is handling what we call the care and feeding of mentors, making sure that you all are supported. So Doug is still going to be engaged with mentors as it relates to church engagement. So we have an ambassador program, and some of you may be ambassadors. We have an ambassador program that is sort of our conduit into churches, oftentimes. And so Doug will not be invisible to mentors, but as far as the day-to-day support of mentors, I have a new team, a new leadership structure for that. Then we also noticed that with all of these technology issues that I described to you all earlier, and the need for more electronic digital training that can be pushed out to people in this country and around the world, that I didn't have a person for that. I had sort of a collateral person who was on the mentor support team, but he was dividing his time with other responsibilities. So Jose Pichardo is now the Director of Training and Program Logistics. So when we're working with these tablet providers, Jose is involved with that. when we're working with the scanning companies that scan the mail that goes into prisons and scans our lessons, he's developing relationships with them. When it comes to printing on demand, which saves us from having to print a lot of lessons and store them in-house, he's in charge of that. When it comes to developing new and exciting training opportunities for our mentors and pushing that out to the mentors, you've already seen some of that if you're a mentor. Jose is in charge of that as well. So I have some restructuring that's been done. Did some other things, but those are the new ones, the new departments. But I wanted to share that with you so that you would have an understanding that if you hear a different voice, that I wanted you to have a little bit of the thought processes and the reasoning behind that. So I'll pause there too and see if there's any questions before I move on to another topic. Anything in the chat?
May I ask a question?
Certainly.
I'm sorry, I didn't figure out how to unmute myself. It's really about the previous subject.
That's fine.
Like these tablets, who pays for them? And will they belong to the prisoner forever or only as long as he or she is in prison? And then I'm thinking, of course, we can't do anything about it, but it seems like dangerous because if these people that you described that were really good and supportive of what we're doing are changed, and all of a sudden there are people who are anti-Christian, then what goes in the tablets will be controlled by them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that chance. It could be. We always have our finger on the pulse of who we're partnering with, so that we don't partner with people that are not in alignment with our values to the best of our ability. Now, these tablet providers, they're profit-driven companies. But I also know from the prison perspective, having worked in prisons, they are pretty careful about what goes on the tablets, because they have to contract with the state departments of corrections, and the state departments of corrections ultimately approve what's on the tablets. If one of the things that's consistent in all 50 states is nobody wants to be in the funny papers. Nobody wants to be in court over something that's being allowed on a tablet or in a library or anything like that. So I don't have a huge concern about that right now.
Okay.
But I'm trying to think the first part of your question. Remind me again.
So the tablet providers, you say they don't charge the prisoner. So how do they make money? You said that they are for profit. So
Yeah,
who pays?
the one tablet provider called Origin, they don't charge anything for that. They are technically an education platform provider. And so the Department of Corrections pays for that service.
Thank you.
That's how they get around. Now, they don't make as much money as the other tablet providers. The other tablet providers, the tablets serve as ways to email, and people in prison are charged per email. The tablets are often used as telephones. So the old TV movies of prisons where you see people in the long telephone lines, that's pretty much a thing of the past because they use the tablet as their phone. There's an exorbitant charge per phone call. They also order or download music, they download books, they download videos, and they're charged for all of that.
Okay.
So it's an individual choice whether to make the phone call, send the email, or download content. Our contention is, and the reason that probably we're not getting a real warm and fuzzy response from those tablet providers is because we insist that our program is free.
Mhm.
We're not going to charge anybody to study the Bible in a Crossroads course. So consequently, unless they charge us, the tablet providers, they're not making any money about putting our content on their tablets. And while someone would be studying the Bible on their tablet, they're not buying movies and music and making phone calls and sending emails. And when you consider that we have 28,000 students, and you do the math, all of a sudden they think, well, we got to charge Crossroads for that. So it's a business
Yeah.
thing. That's why I'm looking for kind of a workaround to where we're not dependent upon them to deliver our content electronically. I'm working on this is a very early stages, so it may never happen, but if God's will, it will. If it's God's will, it will happen. I'm actually working on an idea, which is all it is right now, where we would have our own tablets and have our own controlled content on there and make it available to people who want to have Christian content. It's a pipe dream right now, but boy, it'd be nice to just control it and not and not have
Yes.
to worry about any of those things that you mentioned.
Okay.
But
Thank you very much.
yeah. All right. So that's sort of the plan anyway. Oh, and as far as the inmates paying, do they keep the tablets? Most cases not. The students, the people in prison do not keep the tablets. They're turned in when they leave prison. A couple of exceptions to that, but not many. All right. Any other questions on previous or my last section? How am I doing on time? I'm doing pretty good, aren't I, Alice?
You're doing good. We got about 20 more minutes, so probably one more topic and time for some more questions.
Oh, I got like 6 more topics. No, I'm kidding. A couple of exciting things. These are just more mentioned than anything else. We in probably hopefully the fall, if not later in the year, we will be introducing a new curriculum, a reentry curriculum. And this reentry curriculum is designed to help people address issues that are germane to helping someone coming out of prison, help them prepare to come home, and to address those issues from a biblical perspective. So we're real excited about that, and we will be restructuring the entire lesson program format to accommodate that. The reason for that is we did an analysis of our student involvement, and we found out that the highest dropout rate was at Tier 2, Lesson 4. Tier 2, Lesson 4. That's about a year and a half. Or I'm sorry, not a year and a half. That's about 2.5 years worth of lessons. Ironically, or not so ironically, that's about the average sentence length in a state prison. So we were not losing people because they were disinterested. We were losing them because they were getting out of prison. That was the average sentence length. So that told us that we have a whole big group of people who reach a point in their Crossroads experience where they have probably 18 months or less left on their sentences. So we've designed this reentry curriculum, and John Byrne has written it, and our staff have helped edit it and finalize it. We've designed this reentry curriculum to where if a person finishes Tier 1 and they have less than 18 months left on their sentence, they will be diverted to the reentry curriculum so that it will fit their need of helping to prepare to go home. And I'm just real excited about it. I think it's the right thing to do. It fits our demographic of people in prison. It's very helpful to families to have a person better prepared to come home. So it just makes a lot of sense. So I'm real excited about that. That's one of the changes that's coming. And the other good language is more on the international front. We had an initiative starting in this fiscal year to translate more lessons into more languages. And the reason for that is we have a large presence in other countries. We're in about 20 other countries around the world, but we did not have our full scope of lessons in those languages. Thailand's a good example. We had a presence in Thailand, but we had no lessons in Thai, which makes no sense whatsoever. You know, we couldn't adequately serve those students in their native tongue. So we rearranged our staff a little bit. Stephen is our manager of translation services. We put him in that role to work with our marketing communications team. And as of today, we have achieved our initial goal of 19 lessons translated into 10 different languages. That is right up there in importance, if not more important than the 1 million views on tablets. That is a huge accomplishment with a huge impact internationally, to where we can go into a country and we can engage a student for a longer period of time with more of the gospel in their native tongue, which is just super exciting. So I'm extremely proud of our staff, Stephen and Amy and others who have worked so hard on this. I think Paige was probably involved in that as well. I think she's on this call. Just exciting time internationally to have those lessons translated into 10 different languages. We're not going to stop there. We're going to translate more lessons. This was our base goal. We do have other goals that we have to focus on. So we'll continue, not at that same torrid pace, but we'll continue to translate more and more lessons into more and more languages. And then the goal is, wherever those 10 languages are prominent, those are the countries that we will focus on in building a strong infrastructure in those countries before we add any more languages. That just makes sense to me from an infrastructure organization standpoint. So that's kind of what I had on my list. There's tons of other things I could talk about, but as my staff knows, I'm a bit of a talker. So I want to spare you that experience and allow enough time for any questions. So are there any questions on anything I've talked about, or any topic that I didn't touch on that you're curious about? I'm more than happy to chat.
I just want to really commend you for doing that re-entry lesson program, because as we all know, that's a huge crisis point for the student to get out of prison and have to figure out how to live outside. So I'm really excited, because in the past, I had trouble getting help from Crossroad to help people integrate. And also about the languages, that's wonderful. That's really great. Praise the Lord.
Amen. And along with that as well, we did the season 1 of Doing Time that is on the tablets. Season 2 of Doing Time is going to be focused on as a compatible series to that reentry course. So somebody who has access to the tablets could take our reentry courses and at the same time listen to supportive content on the tablets on same or similar topics to kind of reinforce the message, if you will. So excited about that too.
Yes.
How will you find out the amount of time they have left?
Bernice, you want to weigh in on that? Are you on?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to, Joe. So the plan is I believe it's the second to last lesson before they get to that point, there will be a section in the lesson that asks the student to indicate how much time they have left. And so then when we process that lesson, then we'll know which track to put them on. I would just add one point, because of everything going on. I think it's probably going to be later than this fall when we launch the reentry. We want to launch it as soon as possible, but I think it's probably going to be after this fall.
Okay. I live in a world of hope. And Bernice is not at the beach. She's
Yeah.
So someone
I
asked a
have-
question on
yeah.
the chat. Many students indicate that they keep their lessons, and especially their letters from mentors, and take them home when they leave prison. How will they do that if it was all on an iPad and they have to return it when they leave? I don't fully know the answer to that. What my hope is that if a student, here's my hope, and the technology is not there yet. If a student signs up to participate electronically on a tablet, they would have a unique Crossroads login. And that login, and I haven't talked to my staff about this, so sorry. That login would be sort of a web-based login per se. So then they get out of prison, they go home, and they get on their regular computer or their regular tablet. My hope is that they would continue to have that same Crossroads login, which would have stored in there their letters from their mentors, their completed lessons, those types of things. That's all a part of what I said, where the technology needs to catch up to it. But we're trying to stay a step ahead of the technology in our ideas and concepts, because I would rather the technology catch up to us than us have to catch up to the technology.
Yeah, I have a question
Mm-hmm.
relevant to the reentry program. Sometimes I hear testimony of those who've tried to re-enter have difficulty finding a job. Is there any way of kind of connecting with employers who would be more ready, through churches or employers who would be more ready to hire for employment someone who's come out of prison? I don't know if that's a possibility to even pursue.
It's outside of our scope right now. As far as, my staff is pretty stretched doing what we do right now. It's a good question. What we typically do now when people drop by the office or contact us, we'll refer them to people that we know that provide those types of services. In almost every case, some states do it better than others. Before a person leaves prison, they have to have a community plan. They have to have a reentry plan. And that reentry plan includes things like transportation, housing, employment, healthcare, those types of basic life needs that we take for granted, but they don't have to worry about when they're in prison because it's all given to them. So we don't have the capacity to do that right now. My long-term goal, and I stated it to the board when they hired me, is to have a Crossroads app where those types of opportunities, those types of services would be listed. The challenge is, quite honestly, in all 50 states, the resources are different. So we have students in all 50 states, and if we have resources on our website, for instance, that are germane to Michigan, person getting out of prison in Vermont, it wouldn't help them. So doing it state by state is just a huge undertaking. Now, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, I've learned, has put together such a nationwide catalog. And there's also another organization, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it right now. Can't think of it. The guy just emailed me yesterday to see if I'm going to be at the ACA conference in Nashville in August. Named Fred, but I can't remember his organization. He does such a thing, but even that, it doesn't cover all the services that are needed. So that's a tall order. It's a tall order because of all. If we were just in one state or in one area, it'd be easier. But nationwide, it's a big tall order that I don't have the staff for right now. But great idea.
All right, another question in the chat. If you could expound a little bit on the ambassador program.
Okay. Is Elena or Doug on?
I can take that, Joe.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
Yeah, I look at the ambassador program as and we'd love to talk to you about it if you want to email me, is someone that is a higher impact volunteer, someone who has a desire to carry the message of Crossroads, of what you do, out further than you probably do now, whether you're able to share the ministry with churches, within your church, with people in the community. Yeah, I would just love to talk to you about. Basically, what we do is we equip you to be to speak on behalf of Crossroads, and that's our goal: is that you are equipped enough to feel that you're equipped and then empowered to speak on behalf of Crossroads and whatever network that you have in your community.
And it's a program that we're working hard to strengthen in Doug's new role as Director of Church Engagement, because it really is a pipeline to our churches and the churches that they attend and the churches in their area as well. So you're going to hear and see more about that. Brian made a comment about how they do reentry internationally. Brian, are you still on?
Yep, I'm right here.
Okay, yeah. Speak about what you wrote.
Yeah, just on the international piece, you brought up a really good point. How do we find people, help people get jobs? How do we help them get reacclimated? And and Joe mentioned too, we only have a certain amount of staff in our organization. So when I first started, that was a big thing that all of my international people were talking to me about. What does reentry look like? We need to do more with reentry. And we have spent probably the past, Joe knows this, we spent probably the past 2 years really digging into that. And internationally, we have really highlighted the role of the local church and equipping churches to be part of that solution when people get out of prison. So they are playing a much more vital role in helping people establish community when they get out, establishing a job or a career when they get out. Just the social skills and picking up where we left off with our lessons, developing them and discipling them when they get out. So that's really kind of our long-term strategy internationally, is really developing the church to take on that role.
Thanks, Brian. And that dovetails with what I talked about earlier in our conversation today about our desire and establishing Doug's new role to really solidify our relationship with the church community. And that's just so important, to us. It grounds our ministry. Okay. It grounds our ministry. If we are disconnected from the church in any way, shape, or form, then we're unplugged from that real power source where our mentors dwell and where churches support us financially and all of those things. So it's happening in the U.S. and it's happening international as well. Any questions? Any other questions? Or I have a closing comment or two.
I'll
Joe.
ask a couple of questions, Joe, about the Tennessee pilot program. First of all, I'm anxiously awaiting for that to launch. How close are we to that? Do you have any idea? And my second question is the sample lesson that we looked at in preparation for our mentoring in that program was, I think, one of the Who Are You series lessons. How many lessons do we actually have ready to go in that pilot program?
We're finalizing Who is Jesus. I got the draft video of that yesterday or day before. And then What is the Bible will be the following one that we produce. To answer your question of how close we are, we're very close. This is the reason we do a pilot, is to work out all the bugs. And by the way, belated happy birthday to you. To work out all the bugs. And we encountered in working with the computers at Core Civic, we encountered the fact that something called JavaScript had to be loaded onto their computers because that's what communicated with the lesson and the platform, the education provider. Then they loaded it, so we thought, okay, we're good, we're ready to go. And then for whatever reason, it wasn't working. So where we are right now is that E5I, the company that is sort of the engine that's driving this, and their technology people and Core Civic's technology people are meeting to try to figure out what happened. And other than that, that's, to me, after that, we've got the students enrolled, we've got the mentors signed up to support. We're going to provide a further, more detailed training to them once we're ready to push the go button. And that we're so close. We just ran into that JavaScript glitch, which I'm glad we ran into it now instead of later. That's why you do a pilot. So we're close. Anything else?
Joe,
Yes.
a verse that I have the students, I encourage them to pray is in Psalm 37. I encourage them to pray the first 8 verses, but there's an incredible promise where David writes that you shall dwell in the land and you will be fed. And to me, that's a promise of a place to live and a job.
Mhm.
And you may have to look for both of these, but this to me is a promise that these guys and gals, when they get out, will be able to find a place to live and will find a job. May not be the best, but to me, that's just a tremendous promise that so shall you dwell in the land and verily you shall be fed. And to pray that while they're in, so that when they get out, then they can trust that their Heavenly Father is going to help them find a place to live and a job.
I love that. That's what Psalm was that?
Psalm 37.
Psalm
I think
37.
that specific promise is verse 3, but the first 8 verses are really tremendous.
Yeah, I'm going to look that up myself. I think that's not only true of them, but true of all of us
Right.
at different phases in life. So I appreciate you sharing that. Anything else? By Alice's time clock, I have 4 minutes.
Yep, we've got just a couple of minutes, maybe time for one more question, and then I would say let's we'll go ahead and close it out.
Okay.
If no other questions, I would turn it back over to you, Joe, for final thoughts.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I do want to reiterate my appreciation. I'm honored to do this with you all, and hopefully it's beneficial to you all, and you'll tell your friends about the next one. We couldn't do what we do without you. We are in the last 10 days of our fiscal year, and we appreciate so much your support, whether you're a financial supporter or a mentor or both. We can't do what we do without you. So if one of our big advancement goals this year is to engage new people into the ministry. Not so much as mentors, because we're good with mentors. We never have trouble recruiting mentors. But from the financial standpoint, our costs are rising. The cost of a stamp is going up from like 67 to 73 cents or something like that.
Ooh.
You get a discounted rate because of our bulk, but our costs are going up. So if you know of new people who you might share your experience with Crossroads with, in the hopes that they would consider supporting us financially, I'm never ashamed to ask that. People have said, don't do that on this call, Joe. But no, I'm never ashamed to ask that because we need that in order to continue to do what we do. So that's a sincere request that if you consider your own giving, but also help us expand our reach by reaching new people, talking to your church, talking to your friends, your neighbors, your circle of influence, and help us help more people. The board has set a goal for us in 5 years to go from 28,000 enrollments to 70,000 enrollments. And we are embracing that as something that is biblically sound, to be with those in prison as if we were there with them, and in chains as if suffering in chains as if we were suffering along with them. And I just covet your friendship and your support, and am so thankful for all that you do, and for giving us an hour of your time today. So thank you so much, and appreciate your kind comments in the chat as well. I'll turn it back over to you, Alice.
Great timing. Excellent. So we are going to go ahead and wrap it up. I will leave the video on for a couple more, maybe about another minute or so. If you have any other questions or you'd like someone to reach out to you, please leave your email, and we can continue to answer questions or connect you with those that would be most appropriate. So thank you again for your time today and for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you on the next Coffee with Joe, which should be in about September. So watch for that.
Thanks, everybody. God bless you.
God bless you.